Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we're asking if Lionel Johnson could replace the angel Sanguinius. What if the lion was at the Siege of Terra instead? General spoiler warning to begin, as the events we're discussing today are from across the Warhammer 40k universe, so you have been warned. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. Now, earlier in the week, we discussed the what if question of Guilliman being at the Siege of Terra instead of Sanguinius. And for me, it came with undoubted benefits, the Ultramarines Legion being by far the largest, over twice the believed size of the Blood Angels, as well as Guilliman's obvious tactical and strategic genius. In many ways, Guilliman and his legion at the Siege of Terra would have given the defenders a far greater chance. However, the loss of the Angel, had it all boiled down to Horus's gambit once again, could have proved pivotal. And well, today we move on to Lionel Johnson, the third Primarch of their Imperium Secundus trio. What if he were at the Siege of Terra instead of Sanguinius? What if the Dark Angels were standing firm instead of the Blood Angels? Before we begin, as always, this is just my opinion and some fun discussion. Agree or disagree, that's the beauty of talking lore. Drop your own thoughts in the comments below. As a quick recap for those that may not be aware, Sanguinius was actually journeying to reach Terra alongside his brothers Rabute Guilliman and Lionel Johnson, the three legions departing Ultramar and braving the Ruin Storm together. Ultimately breaking Chaos's storms across the galaxy, the three legions found the War Master's forces still arrayed against them, and here Guilliman and the Lion would sacrifice their own journeys in order to allow Sanguinius to make it through, using their legions as distractions to allow the Blood Angels to slip through the net. So, it's a simple question. What if the Lion were the one who made it through, rather than Sanguinius? Now, this for me is an incredibly interesting proposition. Probably more so than Rabute Guilliman, as the Lion is anything but as straightforward. Not only is the Lion a more deadly fighter than Guilliman, in my opinion at least, but he's also very different mentally and tactically, as well as also possessing a larger legion than Sanguinius. So let's begin there. As we said with Guilliman, I don't like to put too much stock into exact numbers. However, we can use them as a rough guide at least. At the opening of the heresy, the Dark Angels were believed to number around 200,000 legionaries, making them easily one of the larger legions. Comparatively speaking, the Blood Angels were believed to be around 120,000. So while not bringing over double the legion size that Guilliman may have done, that is still a vast difference, even with accounting for losses throughout the heresy and the known Dark Angels sent out under Corswain's command. The Dark Angels would be bringing more manpower to Terra any way you look at it, and substantially so. They have a legion around 2/3 larger than the Blood Angels. They are also the first. The Dark Angels have an armory of awesome firepower. They have weapons, vehicles, artifacts, all unknown to any other legion. Prototypes and creations of such devastating power, they were only made once. There is no doubt that all of it would have been unleashed in the Emperor's defense. Their fleet, too, is perhaps the most powerful of any legion, boasting multiple ancient designs and patterns including more Gloriana-class battleships than any other legion as well. Really, any way you wish to look at it, the Dark Angels are bringing a lot to the table. You could argue more than Guilliman's overwhelming numbers. So, in principle at least, the Dark Angels on Terra could be a big step up over the Blood Angels, which I know sounds like heresy to say. But what of the Primarch? Well, this is a bit harder to figure out. The Lion is prideful, stubborn, arrogant. 3 traits that symbolise all of the Primarchs for sure, but particularly the Lion. There is of course the possibility he would reach Terra and seamlessly cede to all of Rogal's commands and authority without question, realising just what is at stake. Perhaps even Malcador re-emphasising how important it is that he doesn't question Rogal's orders, that Rogal is the Lord Commander of the Imperium. He is the Praetorian of Terra. Again, it is entirely possible the Lion would cause no waves. However, this is Lion L. Johnson we're talking about, and there is a little bit of a past between the brothers, coming into conflict regarding campaign strategy before, within Rogal Dawn's own Primarch series novel no less. And this was very much a newly found L. Johnson, so he did feel a little out of character from the normally silent, calculating Primarch that we're used to. If he did make it to Terra, I for one could see the Lion being very similar to Jagatai in a way, ceding to the overall strategy, for the most part, until frustration or opportunity presents itself. Much like the charge of the White Scars, I could easily see L. Johnson wanting to move onto the front foot after a while. Rogal Dawn may be the master of defense, but the Lion is a hunter, and so his battlefield command generally follows the same instincts. I really couldn't see the Lion being content with staying behind the walls, having to hold the line and fighting back wave after wave of the enemy, not being able to take the fight to them. That could perhaps be the biggest loss of Sanguinius, who was always that unifying presence, who Rogal and Jagatai could trust no matter what. Left with just Jagatai and the Lion, that could just leave that little bit too much doubt in the back of Rogal's mind. Always that small question ringing in the back of his head. Are they going to stick to the plan? One Maverick in Jagatai was manageable, but having 2 could cause problems. The Lion's loyalty was never in doubt, but even on Macragge, Guilliman and Sanguinius were left in the dark about just where and what L. Johnson was doing. Most of the time they didn't even know where he was, telling them one thing and then doing another. Rogal simply couldn't afford to have that at the Siege of Terra. Now the Lion would definitely be a notch up over Guilliman in terms of taking on other Primarchs in my opinion. He is an expert swordsman and duelist. Taking out Conrad in hand-to-hand combat is no small feat. All of the brothers feared his prowess as a fighter. However, the Siege of Terra generally held the traitor Primarchs in reserve most of the time, leaving their overwhelming numbers and firepower to do the job for them. So there wouldn't actually be much opportunity for the Lion to go up against his brothers. And unlike Sanguinius, he'd hardly be able to fly from one much needed battlefront to another. Plus, as good as the Lion is, he isn't Sanguinius. I'd be hard pressed to say he could achieve the same accomplishments as the Angel. If you've read Echoes of Eternity, you know what I'm talking about. Now, the final confrontation aboard the Vengeful Spirit. Could the Lion defeat Horus? Or could he make the so-called chink in the armour the Emperor needed? Well, anytime we've had a vote, Sanguinius has always won as the best Primarch fighter in a landslide. However, I would definitely put the Lion in a top 5 minimum, maybe even a top 3. He doesn't possess the Angel's foresight, but he does appear to have a particular psychic talent for shutting out chaos from his mind. So I think of all the Primarchs, aside from my obvious Leman Russ bias, the Lion would probably be the guy you'd want to go up against Horus. After the Angel, of course. The psychic assault and whispers of the ruinous powers would seemingly struggle to affect him, or at the very least be diminished. And given the Lion's cold personality, I don't think he'd have any emotional hesitation on landing the killing blow if given the chance. So the Lion really counters a lot of the advantages Horus would have. Now, would he win? Most likely not. Horus is just too powerful at this time. But you couldn't write him off, that is for certain. And I'd have to say he is most definitely capable of causing that chink in the armour. Now, as you know, I've stayed away from talking too much Siege of Terra spoilers until the series is over, simply because I really want everyone to enjoy it for themselves. However, minor spoiler here for the Siege of Terra, there is a wild card that could come into play for any figurative L. Johnson being at the siege, and that is the arrival of Corswain. Had Corswain arrived to find his Legion and Primarch there, as he was hoping to do, who knows how differently things could have played out. It certainly would have opened the door for the Lion to play a wild card if he wanted to do something completely unexpected in a counterattack against the traitor forces. Yes, we know the specifics of the false Corswain commands, but I feel the Lion himself being there would have definitely been a game changer. So, overall, we have a stronger, more numerous Legion, one with access to quite devastating weaponry, a solid, expert Primarch fighter in his own right, but one who perhaps could be less reliable for Rogel to command, in a scenario where he truly needed to depend on his brothers more than ever. Though a Primarch who could possibly have a gamble of his own to play later in the siege. For me, much like with Guilliman, for all the advantage the superior Legion brings, it's that personal loss of Sanguinius himself that could just prove to be too much. Though perhaps Lionel Johnson is as good a substitute of a fighter as they come, you could at least argue that's the case. It's the dependability, the unity that Sanguinius brings, that would be the biggest loss for me. No, the Blood Angels are not the biggest or most powerful Legion. However, Rogel could depend on his brother, and thus his Legion, to do everything he asked of them, no matter what. Sanguinius was the perfect counter to the Maverick Jagatai, and together he provided the linchpin of unity between the three brothers. At the end of the day, I don't know if there's any Primarch who could have brought that balance of everything that the Angel did. Guilliman might have had the numbers, the tactical adaptability, but he lacked that charisma and the skill with a blade. The Lion undoubtedly brought the power, the instincts and blade of a huntsman, arguably the best substitute for Sanguinius available. Yet he lacked the personality and mindset that made the Angel who he was, that made the defense of Terra so unified. For all the dominance of the Ultramarines and Dark Angel legions, perhaps it's only right that in Sanguinius's defining moment, he would always be impossible to replace. But as always everyone, what do you think? What do you think would happen if it was L. Johnson who was at the Siege of Terra, rather than Sanguinius? Would the devastating power the Dark Angel's Legion represents prove to be decisive? Would the presence of Lionel Johnson swing the battle in either way? Or as always, would it simply boil down to the missing Sanguinius? Would he being missing from the Siege of Terra simply prove to be too vital? As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below, I love to read them. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. With that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.